morning, all for God. Why not? God has created all things. He has given us everything we have. He is our own consciousness. Why shouldn't we work only for Him? Work only to please God. And then we are safe and secure. Everybody wants to escape pain. You can analyze your situations, and you'll find it reduces to that simple thing, that we want to escape pain permanently. We do not want just to feel well for a certain length of time and then have to revert to pain again. We want to be free from pain permanently. And we can do it easily if we will realize the simple truth, all for God. All for God. And freedom from pain is found only in God, only in His consciousness. God is ever conscious, blissful, eternal existence. Ever conscious, not just for a certain period of time, ever conscious, ever blissful, ever eternal existence is God. And that's your own consciousness, right within yourselves, but it is covered up by attachment, as I pointed out earlier this morning, attachment to these states of consciousness which are impermanent and in which pain exists. Pain exists in outward consciousness, contrast consciousness. It does not exist in the one consciousness of God without its delusion, without its duality. It does not exist there, and if you'll meditate a little, you can prove it easily. But it does exist in this outward consciousness. Certain amount of pain we can rise above by our will. But deeper and more severe pains, it's impossible to rise above them without superseding the consciousness where pain exists, or God's consciousness, and be in it. Then you can absolutely rise above any pain. But some of the deep-seated pains, well, it's good we have a few medicines we can take, because not everyone can do that. But we can, by perseverance, following God, seeking Him in every action, we can at will be in His presence, be above pain. Now we have to do that, we have to learn that in this life. If we do not learn it in this life, learn how to do it, how can we expect to know God in the next life? You have to know how to do it in this life. You have to learn to contact God in this life. And then when you take the overcoat off, so to speak, you are familiar with the underlying eternal presence of God as your soul, which is above pain. Not only above pain, but which is blissful, eternal, ever-existing. So naturally, all for God is a natural and simple way we should live, because He is and constitutes all things. Even in this world existence, if somehow we are fortunate enough to have things go our way, so to speak, and break for us and enjoy it, it's only for a limited time. We all, after a few years, will be not here, at least. We will not be here. Why not be conscious of that eternal existence and to be able to live with the Father eternally? To be always with Him. His consciousness is always there. That doesn't change, but we change. That is, we do not know that we are one with His eternal consciousness. We have to learn that. Learning it at will, we can be with Him. That's why this subject this morning, all for God, is very important. And if we can realize that God is the sole doer, that's the key. And we think we do it. We think that we are the doer. We are not the doer. It is none other than God's consciousness playing a certain part through you and through me. None other than His consciousness is doing that. He is the sole doer. But He is so clever by His delusion that He makes us think that we are apart from Him. That's what it is. He makes us think and feel we're separated from Him. Why does He do that? so he can enjoy the little part we are playing. And so whatever you do, realize it is God who is doing it. Even if you're doing things which you shouldn't do, you have a right to realize it is God who is doing it, but you have to realize it in the right way, not to escape and do it eternally, but to just understand he is the doer. And when you understand that, it will fall off naturally. It will fall off itself. But how can you do that unless you daily meditate, regularly meditate, contact God, and know he is the doer? There's the key. There's always a catch, even in spiritual things. And the catch is you have to know God to know he is the doer. And you know that through regular meditation. Now a reference at this time which our Master has given us and which I hope you will enjoy. Master said to a group of his disciples, "The Lord has arranged for us this visit to this earth. But most of us become undesirable guests by considering certain things here as our very own. Forgetting the temporary nature of our stay, we form various attachments, my home, my money, my work, my family, and they're not yours at all, nor mine. It's all God's consciousness in each and every one of us. If we could but realize it, nobody would lose. You would never lose your relatives. How can the one consciousness lose itself? Except by attachment to something else and then losing its identity. That's all. Nothing is ever lost in God. But when our earth visa expires, all human ties vanish. We are forced to leave behind us all we had thought we possessed. The only one that accompanies us everywhere is our eternal relative, God. Why not know him now? Why be left holding the bag, as they say? Why not know God? Realize now that you are the soul and not the body. We say it every Sunday. I am not this body. I am not this body. It takes a long time to convince somebody or something what we truly are. Realize that you are not the soul, that you are the soul and not the body. Why wait for death rudely to instruct you just what you are? Why not know it now? We are God's children and we can know it. And so, if we act only for God, this is the key. It's so simple yet so difficult. If we act only to please God, it doesn't make any difference what it is, what you are doing. Making a bed, anything, sweeping the house, anything. If you do it to please God, you will never forget him in time, and it'll be a natural thing, and at will you will know he is the doer. Master has this to say, which is most wonderful. If you do this, if you recognize this truth, as I have just pointed out, that God is the sole doer, therefore you do things to please him, then there'll be no attachment, do you see? If you do it to please yourself, you get attached, or your family. But if you do it to please God, recognizing that he is in your family or in whatever you are doing, there's no attachment. And when you do not have that thing, you are not sorrowful. These are eternal truths which we must realize. Now our Master has said this. If you do this, you will see him everywhere. Instead of losing your family or those things you enjoy, those things which are near and dear to you, you will not lose them at all. As he says, you will see him everywhere. You will see that there is no separation between your life and omnipresence. You see the key? It's the fact that we separate this one life and feel we're separated from God. That we think of dual things. I'm here and you're there and God's somewhere else. No, but if you remember the Master's words, you will see him everywhere. You will see that there is no separation between the life which is flowing through you and God's omnipresence. How wonderful that is. That is the key to the whole, or the solution of life, is to realize there's no separation between this thing in me that's talking and this thing in you that's listening. It is all God's consciousness. Break that separation and there'll be no more sorrow. And you will live thankful that you know God is and that there's no separation between you. That's the greatest sin, is to feel apart from God. We have no right to do that because it is not true. God is, He is in us. Our consciousness is none other than His. Why make it separated? Why separate it? It is not necessary at all. And the man who feels himself sufficient to do all things, he's the egoist or the egotist. Now when he feels that way, what power does he use? He uses nothing but his little limited power of ego. And that's very limited. If his heart suddenly stops, the ego is gone. Very limited power. His human will is limited. But on the other hand, when that man unites his will with God's will, or his consciousness with God's consciousness, then his will becomes God's will, not his little limited ego will. That's the key. That's the key. If we would but realize God is the doer, no matter what you are doing, much more power will come to you, much more keenness, much more stability, much more calmness, much more ability to do those things which otherwise would seem impossible. Why? Because you've hooked your will up, so to speak, if I can use that slang expression, with God's will, none other than His will. And in all things, in all feeling, yes, in eating even, you will enjoy the food better because you've got company. God is with you. He's enjoying it, and you know He's enjoying it. Why shouldn't it be better? These things we must understand from a practical standpoint, not from just a theoretical standpoint. But you will not know it until you do it. Meditate, make the contact with God, then go out and eat a nice dinner. But you have to eat scientifically now. You cannot go out and eat a big, thick thing they call those steaks, you know. They're not good for us. There's too much toxin in them. But whatever you eat, you will feel God through eating, through anything. Why not? Why should we just have to feel Him in a meeting like this? We should not do that. God is all. God is everything, and we must realize it. And so the man who does that, who doesn't depend on his own little ability of his ego, but unites his consciousness with God, then he has God behind him. In fact, he will feel no separation. He'll realize God is the doer. No matter what part we are playing, let's play it. Feeling. We're simply, God is part of God's consciousness, is using this vehicle, and He's enjoying whatever it is, or He's not enjoying it. That's His business. But we must realize He's the doer. That's the key to this subject this morning, all for God. God is everything. We should thank Him for everything, because everything comes from Him. Just a little diversion to show you that everything is from God, and if you do not like it all the time, just give Him the credit anyway. Why not? He's the doer. This minister was preaching out in the country, and he was shouting away, and he came time to take the offering, so he passed his hat, having nothing else, and the people in the congregation were a little bit financially embarrassed at that time, and so the hat came back empty. And so he folded his hands, and he said, Lord, he says, and prayed, Lord, I thank Thee for returning my hat to me. So remember that. Sometimes it might seem bad. What if he'd lost his hat? It's quite a cute little story, a little diversion. So God is all. Hat or no hat. He's all. We must realize that. So as long as we work for ourselves, we will never be successful. I've talked with quite a few people, especially those who are well thought of in the different industries, and I find that those who are the top-notchers, they are the ones that pray to God for help and depend on Him. It's a great thing to understand. Do not think you can do it alone, because when you just get all set and everything seems to be coming your way, it'll break wide open. But if you have God, it makes no difference. And the chances are it will not break wide open, because God is mindful of His own. And I find the greatest of them are the most humble. Why shouldn't we be? God is the doer. We're not doing it. He just gives us a little part to play. We must realize that we are his own consciousness, and there is no difference between that and his power which is within us. Just a reference from Master's autobiography, which his Master Sri Testaji says so wonderfully, to allot the Lord a secondary place. Think of it. To allot the Lord a secondary place in life was to me inconceivable. He is the sole owner of the cosmos, silently showering man with gifts from life to life. There is but one gift man can offer in return. There's only one thing we can give the Lord, and he is empowered to withhold or bestow it. We can give it to God, or we can say no. And that is the love which he has implanted naturally in our heart. We have free will. We can give that to him, or we cannot give it to him. We can return it, and he's crying for that love, because that's the only thing he's got. He's got millions of universes, everything but that love that he has implanted in the hearts of his special creation, his own children. He has given us free will. We do not have to return it. But he wants it because he has nothing, he has all things but that. And that's why he wants that so much. And so we have this choice. We have free will, as I have said. We can stay out in this delusion, suffering pain and misunderstanding and lack of freedom and suffering until we make up our mind we return home to God, which is what we should do. We have the free will to stay in it, but thank God we have the free will to return home and enjoy what is our natural birthright, the realization of our oneness with his presence. God has given us free will. That's why there's so much trouble. That's why you can never tell how a person is going to jump, so to speak. You may think you know a person, but that person has free will to go and do what he wants to do. And sometimes that's why these disappointments come and these misunderstandings, because they jumped the way you think they weren't going to jump. But sometimes, if you are calm and feel with your heart, you can tell a person will never jump except the way you know he will. That's true friendship. When you feel a person, the first time you meet them, that they're not going to change. They will never be different toward you, no matter whether you're pushed down and jumped on and slandered or anything. They will never change toward you. They are your real friends, and the chances are you were with them before. We have a few of those, each one of us, but they're very few. But when you do feel them, that's, as Master said, friendship is the greatest relationship, whereby God draws back the prodigal souls back home to him. And when you have real friends, listen, they're invaluable. I wish I had many more, and so do you all. But what God gives us, we always have the one greatest friend, and that is God himself. He never changes. You do anything. You be the worst sinner, and you look within quietly and calmly, there he is. He doesn't change. That's why he's the friend of all friends, the one eternal Father. Now we come to the point of distractions. Watch the distractions. Do not have, Master says, too many distractions. Why? Because they prevent you from keeping God and making him the pole star of your life, like the chant we sang. Distractions draw us away. God is jealous that way. You cannot have too many distractions. You will lose your contact with him. But if we watch that, never forget him, do every action to please God, that means keep the needle of your attention always on God. And when you once get the habit formed, so to speak, it's most wonderful, because he never disappoints us. We sometimes are disappointed because of our karma and other such things, which we have laid up. But he never disappoints. He's always there ready. The law is exact, and he's always there to welcome us if we will do our part. So we must keep the needle of our attention on God by avoiding too many distractions. But if you work to please God in everything you do, how can you miss Him? You see, that's the key. That's the point. Realize God is all. Then your common sense even will tell you, I cannot afford not to remember Him in everything I do. Remembering Him, you will never lose anything. No matter what coat you are wearing, you will never lose His presence because He is. And this dream will pass away. This dream will pass away, as Master says, gone forever, the fitful flickerings of mortal memory. This all goes away like your dream. But you and I and all those near and dear to us do not go with the dream. The bodies go, but the consciousness melts into His. We cannot lose if we remember that God is all and is the sole doer, and we are a part of His great omnipresence. That's the point. Do not lose the realization that you and God are one, and that your consciousness is His omnipresence. And if there's a separation, do away with the separation. How? By the practice of yoga, self-realization fellowship yoga, which our Master has left for us. That's what it's for. Yoga means union. Union with what? With the presence of God within. Then there'll be no separation between us. How to do this? How to do this? How to surrender all for God? First, continual baptism in the holy vibration of which I spoke this morning. Not by works of righteousness are we changed. Not by doing all good works. That isn't what God wants. He has plenty, doesn't need any of those things. Not by works of righteousness, but by the washing and regeneration of the Holy Ghost within us, which is the word of which I have spoken this morning. Merge in that, that's all. Give a little time for God in meditation. Merge in it. Be one with it. What happens? You become it. That's all. If you mix with publicans and sinners, you'll become them unless you have that oneness with God. Jesus mixed with them because he was one with His Father. I and my Father are one. So, the first thing to change and to surrender all for God is to realize this one thing, that you are changed only by the washing and regeneration of God's presence within you and within each and every one of us as the holy vibration. With its light, with its sound, and greatest of all, with God's omnipresent consciousness and love. That will change you. Why not? If you mix with it, you become it. That's the law of environment. Make your environment God's presence within you. Faith is necessary, of course, at first. It's not plausible and practical to jump right into God's presence. You cannot do it. You have to have faith at first. But then, if you practice the teachings of one as our Master, who had that realization with God, had that understanding that He and God were one, if you follow Him and His techniques, you too will have what He had, without question of a doubt. Faith is necessary at first. But if you just remember God, He won't disappoint us. The fact we do not remember Him. We do all sorts of things and forget all about Him. Suddenly we think, I have to meditate. What a fine way to treat Him who gives us all things.